The wait is almost over, everyone. In only a few short months, Avengers Endgame will grace the big screens. The hype has never been more real in the history of hype. The new movie is promised to be bigger, bolder, and even more traumatic than the one that came before. This time, the deaths are real, the ending will be explosive, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe will never be the same. Unfortunately, the folks over at Disney and Marvel have been extraordinarily tight-lipped about what's actually going to happen in the film. Seriously, there were US spies who knew more about the Russian nuclear codes during the Cold War than we know about the plot of this film. Luckily for you, we have combed the internet for all the very best fan theories about just how the Avengers are going to be able to save the universe in just under 4 hours. With any luck, several of these might actually come to pass. Here are 20 Avengers Endgame theories that have a good chance of being true. It's hard to believe, but Chris Evans has been playing Captain America since 2011. Some of his roles may have just been cameos, but that doesn't change the fact that he's shown up for duty every time he's been called. Rumor has it that Evans isn't moving forward with his Marvel contract, and that Avengers 4 will be the last time he suits up. The main theory behind this is that Steve Rogers is going to make some kind of ultimate sacrifice in order to save the universe from Thanos. Come on, Chris, don't do this to us. You've only played the character 9 times. Is it so hard to go for an even 300? We're not ready. Gamora's death in Infinity War was one of the most surprising parts of a movie that was 90% surprising parts. While it seems like all is over for her, one of the last scenes of the movie gives some fans hope. Right after the snap, we see Thanos talking to baby Gamora in some sort of odd dimension. Many think that instead of dying, Gamora was just transported inside the Soul Stone. These same fans think that all the characters who died during the decimation were sent there as well. They released a trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, so clearly they're all coming back. Though, there's a good chance that Drax will mysteriously be played by Vin Diesel instead of Dave Bautista, who had a public row with Disney. Might not be a good idea to badmouth the Mouse House. In 10 years, they'll probably have bought out Earth. For those that don't know, Avengers Infinity War and Endgame are both based on some of the most popular Marvel comics of all time. Jim Starlin's The Thanos Quest and its sequel, The Infinity Gauntlet. In the comics, the one who ends up taking the gauntlet from Thanos is none other than his daughter Nebula. She gets a wild new hairdo and gets pretty drunk with power, so much so that Thanos actually teams up with the Marvel heroes to help bring her down. It would be pretty great if Endgame follows in this direction. It would also make for a pretty great twist. Loki has died so many times in the MCU that it's starting to feel like a running joke. In Infinity War, though, it seems like this time it would be for good. Finally, we've reached Loki's true death scene after Thanos choked the life right out of him, in front of his brother. Then Disney announced that Tom Hiddleston would be featured in his very own Disney TV show centered around Loki. The big theory here is that Loki pulled another illusion on Thanos, or that when the Avengers undo the decimation, they'll somehow undo Loki's death too. Who knows, maybe Thanos will just resurrect him because he realized that farming isn't as much fun as he thought it would be. The early set photos have fans reeling because they seem to show a present-day Tony Stark interacting with Captain America and Thor from the era of the first Avengers movie. This seems to imply that the team will be using time travel in their battle against the Last Titan. The common theory about how this happens is that Scott Lang somehow takes the team into the quantum realm. Ant-Man and the Wasp wasn't exactly subtle with their mentions that time travel was possible in the realm. Infinity War was blatant with their foreshadowing when Tony discussed a dream with Pepper where they had a kid. It sounds like this was a throwaway line, but it's much more likely that they were teasing a reveal in the sequel. The film seems to be jumping in time, so it's possible that we'll get to see them go into the future where Tony will get to bond with his adult daughter. That and Gwyneth Paltrow just came out and said that the two of them are going to have a kid. Spoiler alert much? Speaking of really unsubtle hints that Tony Stark threw out in Infinity War, he mentions his wedding to Pepper several times in the film. The common theory here is that the movie will end with a great big wedding between Tony and Pepper with all the extended cast in attendance. This would be fitting with many similar comic events. Outside of big universe-shaking battles, wedding issues are some of the most iconic stories in the Marvel collection. Weddings like the ones between Reed Richards and Sue Storm, Black Panther and Storm, and Peter Parker and Mary Jane are some of the most legendary issues of all time. Avengers Endgame is going to close out what's known as the third phase of the MCU. We will likely see several of the biggest names in the extended franchise bowing out to focus on other things. This is going to leave a pretty big gap for new characters to fill. One of the most prevalent rumors about Marvel Phase 4 is that it will hint to a Young Avengers movie. It's a team of Teen Titan-esque younger superheroes that are all largely based on the Avengers. The big thing supporting this is that actress Emma Fuhrmann is rumored to be playing the older version of Scott Lang's daughter, Casey. In the comics, Casey goes on to become a superhero named Stature, then later changed to Stinger, who is part of the Young Avengers. Fans are still very angry at Star-Lord for dropping the ball in the fight against Thanos. Many feel as though the bulk of the blame for the decimation rests on his shoulders. Despite this, no one really seems angry at Doctor Strange for simply handing over the Time Stone to Thanos in order to save Tony's life. This is because fans have been watching Marvel movies for 10 years and have become really good at reading between the lines. Early in the film, Strange makes it very clear that he would gladly let Tony die if that meant saving the Time Stone. This totally contradicts what happens though. It probably had something to do with Strange's vision quest where he looked at 14 million futures in order to see the one where they were victorious. Perhaps the only timeline that brought victory was the one where Tony lived to fight another day. That's supported by the fact that Strange literally name drops Endgame a few minutes before he dies, implying that he knew everything that was going to happen before it did. Note to self, never play chess with Doctor Strange. He cheats. The first Avengers Endgame trailer didn't have a ton of new information, but it did start with an incredibly heartbreaking scene. Tony records a final message to Pepper detailing that he's about to die due to lack of oxygen and food aboard the Milano. So, this leads us to wonder, who is going to come to Iron Man's aid? The smart answer is that this is how Carol Danvers enters the fray. Maybe after she got the call from Nick Fury's weird communication device, she rushes to find Tony to bring him home. Hopefully before she saves him, she explains why she's been missing for 2 decades. I mean, it's nice of you to show up now, Carol, but you've missed like 4 alien invasions, a robot uprising, an interdimensional being nearly obliterating Hong Kong, and whatever in the world was going on in Thor: The Dark World. Now's a good time to show up. One of the biggest recurring changes across all of the Marvel movies is Black Widow's constantly shifting hairstyles and color. Natasha just can't seem to make up her mind. Fans think that her hair color might be more important to Endgame, however. In Avengers Infinity War, Romanoff is shown with a short blonde hairdo. This seems to be her look in the trailers for Endgame as well. Yet, in a released bit of concept art, Black Widow has darker hair again. If you're thinking right now, that's a pretty small thing to base the theory on, you clearly don't know obsessed Marvel fans very well. To them, this obviously means that the Avengers are going back in time, change the future, and that Black Widow's hair is going to be dark, not light, in this changed future. I mean, what else could it possibly be? That she just dyes her hair because she's a super spy and might need to disguise herself from time to time? That's ridiculous! We've seen a many 9 realms across the various Thor movies. Asgard, Thor's home, Midgard, Earth, Jotunheim, Loki's hometown, and several others that were much harder to pronounce. So far, we've seen almost all of them, except for Alfheim, the mystical world of the elves. Sorry, no, home of the light elves. Maybe that's where the remainder of the Asgardians are hiding, who knows? From the 8 Mile style clothing Thor is wearing in the trailer, it seems more likely that he's going to challenge Thanos to a rap battle for the fate of the universe. Once Thanos is dealt with in Endgame, there's going to be a giant villain-shaped hole in the MCU. Who's the next baddie in search of the Infinity Stones? Well, most Marvel fans seem to think that the Skrulls are going to be the next big villain. The Skrulls are shape-shifting aliens who have appeared in Marvel Comics since the 60s. They'll make their first on-screen debut in Captain Marvel later this year. Yes, the old lady that gets socked in the face is a Skrull. In the comics, there's an event called Secret Invasion. There, our heroes will find out that several people in the world have been replaced by their doppelganger Skrulls who are planning an invasion. This has led to a lot of speculation across the internet as to who might already be a Skrull. Many think that characters like Black Widow, Secretary Ross, Everett Ross, no relation, and Maria Hill may have been secret agents for the Skrull Empire all along. If there's no moment where Spider-Man has a Skrull doppelganger and they point at each other like in the meme, then what's the point of even doing it? Aside from Spider-Verse already making that joke. Another big Marvel villain who could easily fill Thanos' oversized shoes is the comic monstrosity known as Annihilus. He's a Cthulhu-looking baddie from an alternate universe known as the Negative Zone. He controls a giant insect-like space army known as the Annihilation Wave. He's kind of like Starship Troopers or Aliens, but on like an apocalyptic scale. In the comics, there's a famous crossover event where various characters like Star-Lord, Nova, Gamora, Drax, and more battle against the Annihilation Wave in a giant Star Wars-style epic. This arc is what led to the formation of the Guardians of the Galaxy that the films are based on. If they're looking for a cosmic battle that might rival the one in Infinity War and Endgame, Annihilation Wave is a pretty safe bet. Fans of the movies might think that Thanos is the biggest bad in the universe, but they'd be wrong. One of the most menacing villains to ever appear in a Marvel comic is the colossal Galactus. He roams the galaxy with his buddy the Silver Surfer, and they visit planets getting into all sorts of adventures. By that, I mean Galactus goes to planets and then slowly devours the entire world and its population like they were a fast food cheeseburger. Galactus and Silver Surfer were featured in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, which did a really bad job adapting them. Seriously, Galactus was basically the black smoke monster from Lost. Very unimpressive. So they can really only go up from there. Speaking of iconic villains that are poorly adapted by the Fantastic Four movies, Doctor Doom would also fill Thanos' role with no problem. You're probably thinking, what, the CEO douche played by the guy from Nip Tuck? You might be surprised to learn that he's actually one of the most iconic villains of the entire Marvel Universe. He's their Darth Vader. The man is an evil scientist, has magical powers, and is the leader of the fictional country of Latveria. You might also be thinking that he was in Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, but we, as a society, decided that movie never happened. The X-Men movie franchise has been an incredibly mixed bag of huge hits like Deadpool, Logan, and Days of Future Past, but it also had its huge downers like X-Men Origins, X-Men Apocalypse, and Dark Phoenix. This all might change when the entire Mutant Extended cast gets to play in the MCU playground at last. Many fans are hoping that Endgame offers some sort of cameo or hint that the X-Men might actually exist in the Marvel Universe. Maybe the post-credits scene will introduce Daniel Radcliffe as Wolverine. You're a Canadian mutant assassin, Harry. Fans were pretty upset when everyone's favorite superhero dad / deadly assassin didn't enter the fray in Infinity War. The in-movie reason for this is that Hawkeye was under house arrest after the events of Captain America: Civil War. Those same fans lost their minds when Hawkeye was shown as a sword-wielding killer in the Endgame trailer. He looks pretty intense in the sequel, and there can only be one reason why. Most think that Clint's entire family got dusted after the snap. This severe trauma is what led him to becoming a killer for hire under the name Ronin, as he briefly went by in the comics. Chances are we're going to see a much darker version of Clint this time around. Bruce Banner and the Hulk haven't been getting along very well lately. Hulk took a trip to Skaro where he acted as a gladiator for years without ever reverting back to Banner. Then, in Infinity War, Hulk gets beaten up by Thanos so badly that he refuses to come out again. Fans think that the two will find resolution in Endgame. It's very possible that Banner and Hulk will combine into one personality like they did briefly in the comics. Professor Hulk has the brilliant mind of Banner and the strength of Hulk. There's little doubt that Shuri was one of the big breakout characters in Black Panther, so fans are really interested to see what happens with her. Eagle-eyed Marvel fans saw a picture of Shuri next to the other characters who got dusted by Thanos, so many just assume she's gone too. Others have a different idea. In the comics, Shuri becomes a Black Panther for a brief period of time when T'Challa is presumed dead. Many fans want to see Shuri suit up as the new Panther. This would be a really easy way for Marvel and Disney to get another franchise out of the wildly successful first movie that just got nominated for an Oscar. If we've learned one thing in the last decade, it's that Disney does love franchises. Hopefully that did a little to tide you over until April 26th. If you need more, feel free to regularly check on Tom Holland or Mark Ruffalo's Twitter page. I'm quite sure one of them will be tweeting out the entire plot of the film at some point between now and then. If you have any new Avengers theories, feel free to let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Avengers news from The Binger. Thanks for watching.